We've got three panelists who will be joining me up front in a bit to talk about maybe three main dimensions of this challenge to give us a bit of a lens so that this is a topic we could speak about for several hours, for several weeks. This could actually be a big program that we can disaggregate into many, many, many subtopics. So the three panelists will give us a bit of an overview from their position based on their expertise and where they're coming from institutionally. And then hopefully that will give us enough basis for a discussion, question and answer, and also for all of you to make your inputs afterwards. The reason why we are convening this conversation is because the Somali Horn really is important. When we think about climate change, this is where you can see the visible manifestations of climate change and the vulnerabilities of climate change happening. I write for a scientific body called the IPCC. And when we're looking for evidence of the impacts of climate change or what is called loss and damage now, I always argue that the Horn of Africa is giving us more and more case studies of what loss and damage looks like. So extreme climate change, you can see that most manifest in the Horn of Africa and across the Somali Horn. And so because this nexus is happening, we need to really think about it in a very urgent perspective. There is a higher frequency of both droughts and floods. It's the two extremes. It's not just dry, but we are all aware of recent flooding that is happening in the Horn and quite catastrophic as well. These extremes are very, very much off the scale, more than has been the norm in the last 70 years. So they are getting more and more extreme, more and more catastrophic. And that's why we need to think about it. There is also a widespread impact. It's not just rain or drought, or the rain or the lack of rain, but it's on the impact on agriculture, on the impact on the local economy, the impact on food, the impact on people's livelihoods and way of life. The local economy and therefore the wider regional economy is destabilized, and this is why we need to talk about it. The three panelists, the Honorable Minister will speak more from a governmental perspective, speaking about a climate change policy and how it works, and providing that central government perspective to the challenge. Hannah will talk more about the role of a more grounded approach to dealing with understanding climate change, and also maybe the community perspective and reflecting on the work that she's been doing with GFA. And lastly, Nuruddin will bring a more regional lens to the conversation and all that in between. So, Honorable Minister, you have the floor first, and a little bit of a 2-minute introduction, and then you can make your presentation.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. marka ugu horeysa dhalinyaro badan waxaan arkaa Soomaaliya aad baan idin salaamaya waana mahadsantiin. Thank you all. My name is Abdullahi Osman. The name he tried to say was Gelchiri, which is a camel header, as if it's loosely translated. I represent the Somaliland government. I'm the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. I thank you, Emmanuel, and all of you. I think Somaliland, or the Horn as general, is the epicenter of the climate change, where the most suffering happens and where it's reality more reality than being talked about. So as the Somaliland government, we are also clouded by the diplomatic cloud, the diplomatic uncertainty, the diplomatic position we are in when it comes to international recognition. So that curtails our ability to do something about, or to have the right funds or the right ability to do something about the climate change impact. lately, as late as this year, the rains which our livelihood depends on was erratic, wasn't coming on time, and when it comes, it creates havoc through floods and runoffs of greater magnitude. It destroys the agricultural land. It removes what's remaining from the topsoil, and it destroys completely the livelihood. That's why we have almost 500,000 IDPs living the outskirts of our cities, mainly Hargeisa, Burao, and Berbera. We are one of the countries that receive the least coverage of the international media. Comparatively little is known about our suffering. People may always, international communities are concerned about issues like terrorism and where fights and other insecurities are happening. But we are not commended or compensated by the peaceful atmosphere we made so we can fight the climate change. And that's really sad. But that's what we want to raise wherever we go. Currently, the new government of Somaliland, which I'm part of, and by the way, I used to be, I held different portfolios from the previous governments, especially the Sinai government. At one point, I was the Minister of Information, and another time, the Minister of Fisheries. And now with the new government, as I mentioned, I am the Minister of Climate Change. I think what we are lacking is knowledge. The most important thing, the most fundamental thing to fight against the climate change, I think, is knowledge, and that's not, when it comes to that, that's not available in our governmental institutions. We lack data to compare, to credible data in order to show exactly the impact that we had through the climate change impact. So we are trying at this time to have to build the education about the climate change. That's why we like the universities and educational institutions contribute to that effect and help us with it. I think I'll leave it for that now and see what next we can add.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Thank you for opening that up and also flagging some of the bigger themes and not just knowledge. And I like what you mentioned, that you think this is the epicenter of the problem, and that's a big statement, because that's where the manifestations of the vulnerabilities and the impacts are seen. I think you also mentioned the big elephant in the room, which is the diplomatic challenge, the lack of recognition and the politics of that, and how that affects even coverage. And there's very little coverage on the added special problem of IDPs, how there's nearly 500,000 IDPs. That's a big issue, and I think that's worth mentioning. And then, of course, the issue of data, systematic, credible, verified, usable data. There's a lot of data, but sometimes it's not usable. So usable data for policymakers and practitioners. So thank you very much. That's very helpful. So we'll come round, we'll make all the other interventions, and then we'll come round for the questions and then the discussions. So thank you very much, Minister. I'm going to move on to the next panelist, Hannah. Maybe just give me a little bit more of an introduction and then your contribution. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Hannah Khatam Mahmoud, and I am currently working as a QA analyst for a tech company in AI. I know it has nothing much to do with climate, but I'm also working together with James Firebrace in the Somali Horn on climate change and predictions, and how to better predict maybe a generation free of 2 to 3 months of predictions instead of the 6 months, which would be very useful for pastoralists and agro-pastoralists in the Somali Horn. So what we have done is, together with the Somali regional state government in Ethiopia, if you guys don't know where there is, there's a federal state that is Somali within Ethiopia. It's the largest federal state of all of Ethiopia by land. So we started the research there. We're hoping to cover all Somali in the Horns, of course, and do the project there as well. So together with the Somali regional state government, they hosted us to do an on-the-ground research. So we started off from Chichiga, and then we went all the way to Gode, and then in Gode we went to the riveting areas. So the riveting areas, they are agro-pastoralists, and they experienced heavy floods during that time. The predictions for the climate in the Somali Horn is very broad. That's another issue that's not really looked at. So they look at large areas and they just predict, for example, droughts. Or droughts in Chichiga, whereas there are floodings in Shabelle. So they put the regions and also other regions in the Somali Horn, they put it pretty much under one umbrella. So it's difficult to tell how to prepare. So there's a forecast for about Generation 1 forecast, which is about 7 days long, so 0 to 7 days. And then there is Generation 2 forecast, which is about 6 months. And agro-pastoralists, they need the in-between. For example, when exactly to plant crops, when exactly to, for example, sell the herds if there's going to be droughts, and so forth. So for example, for them to really plan ahead, they need better climate predictions. If there's going to be floods, if there's going to be rain, and like the minister also said, it's not well documented in the Somali Horn, what's happening really on the ground, and so forth. Just an example, a couple of months ago, I think, we could see in the northern parts, of Somalia, of also, I think, parts of Somaliland, that there was, the rain was very late, so there was a late rainfall for the season, and then after that, the sheep and the camels and the livestock were very weak, and then heavy rain befell them. So due to the flash floods, a lot of livestock did unfortunately die, and this is something we want to, together with meteorologists, with the Climate Hazard Institute, with people, scientists in the UK, we want to be able to predict the 2 to 3 months of predictions for those people, together, of course, with James Firebrace. That's what the JFA is for. And the director is currently with us as well today. So this is what we've been working on, and a little bit more about the regions that we have already covered. So we went up to Gode. So in Gode, obviously, the Shabelle River doesn't just go through the Somali regional state. It goes all the way to Somalia and out of Somalia. So there was heavy floods along those rivers. So I think in the Somali Horn, pretty much everyone is facing the same issues. All of the Somali people, the pastoralists, the agro-pastoralists, they have the same places they usually go to. For example, anyone heard of Bulale?
Yes, we
place.
do. Yes, we do.
Yes, exactly. That's the place we went to next. So went to El Bulale, very old wells. It provides up to 6,000 camels with water a day. And these are people coming from all around any Somali regions, pretty much, in the Somali Horn. So El Bulale, that's one place we went to. It was very nice. You meet Somalis from Somaliland, from Lugar, from Furta, everywhere pretty much, from NFD as well. So that's one really good thing. And then we went up to Qabr Dahar. Obviously, you guys will probably not know these cities if you've never been. But just to show you the stark difference, because we're talking about 350,000 square miles. This alone is larger than the UK. The UK is about 243 square kilometers, not square miles. So the Somali regional state alone is very big. So imagine just putting the climate predictions not on a sub-regional level. So we went up to Qorahay, and then we went to Warded. And Warded, there were a lot of camps. So IDP camps, people that have been displaced, and also due to climate change have suffered a lot of livestock loss. So yeah, and then we went all the way up to the borders, Gashambo, back to Dagahbur, and yeah, we pretty much covered the whole region. I would love to do that for all of the Somali regions in the Horn, since we're facing the same issues, and we're currently working with meteorologists and other scientists to kind of predict that. There's new technology, which through satellite, you can also check the soil moisture on the ground, and that will also probably be very useful for agriculture. Somalis, they're mainly pastoralists. It will be good for us to also plant our own food. I know we get it from other regions currently, so that could also be a thing. And that's it from me. Thank you.
I'll use the one. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Hannah. And I think that was very exciting and interesting. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions coming out of that, because the grounded approach that you are adopting is significantly of interest. And the idea that we can provide better predictions, but better resolution of that data, that gives people enough warning, but it's not just early warning, but so that people can act. It's early warning going with early action, and that's what we need. And I think that you've made a very important point about the widespread nature. You've mentioned lots of cities and where you're going, and that's quite important to know that it's an ubiquitous problem, and that's why we need to gather and have this very general conversation and broad conversation about it. The use of technology is clearly there, and there will be questions about what kind of technology, who owns the data, who helps with that, and how can we scale up, and also who is missed out in these kind of use of technology and satellites, etc. And yeah, that's quite interesting. So thank you very much. That was really, really good to hear that. Our last panelist is Nuruddin, and Nuruddin would be sharing a little bit more on regional perspectives from his work as well.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for inviting us, and thank you, Your Excellency and Hannah, for that comprehensive sort of a brief. I had the privilege over the last 30 odd years to work in the Somali Horn of the region, both humanitarian development, politics, diplomacy, and I've seen the Somali Horn region. We're talking about 1 million square kilometers divided across 4 sovereign states: Somalia, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Djibouti. Recognized, sovereign states, and about 33 million people. So the first thing to say about climate change is regional. We are divided by borders drawn on a map, but we are united by landscape, we are united by livelihood, and we're united by crisis, including climate change crisis. So I think that's the first thing to say, because climate change impact does not stop at the Ethiopian border or at the Kenyan frontier. The droughts that happen in Gedo region in Somalia dries up also the wells in Wajir in Kenya. And the floods that wash through Beledweyne in Somalia will threaten the livelihood of pastoralists as well as agro-pastoralists in the Somali region in Ethiopia, in Ogaden. So this is a one large interconnected ecological zone. And I think any thought of the Somali Horn, it has to be based on that kind of a perspective, because we cannot address it in isolation. So embedded in that is, while the climate change is regional, its solution is political. So the resilience goes through governance, it goes through government cooperation, it goes through joint planning that reflect the nature of the interdependence of these communities across this one large interconnected ecological zone. And the other thing to say about it is, while climate change is complex, simplification is very dangerous, and policymakers are scarred by going through that route of simplifications because they need to make a decision of choice. For example, the largest community within the Somali that is impacted by climate change are pastoralists. And often nowadays you will hear very simplified narrative of saying that we need to change or we need to fix or restore pastoralism, or we need to declare it obsolete. And I think neither is prudent, because pastoralism is not going away. It's here to stay, but it's not going to be fixed. It is evolving, it's changing, it is modernizing, it's becoming more dynamic. And I think policy choices also need to reflect that kind of nature of how it's changing, how it's based on local knowledge that was passed down through generations, and how it's adapting to the modern livelihood that is surrounding it. Perhaps the third thing maybe I want to maybe update, because we are talking about the regional perspective. The minister has told us about what is happening in terms of climate change responses in Somaliland. Hannah has told us about some of the work that's happening in the Somali region. Unfortunately, we were about to join by, we were expecting to be joined by representatives from the Somali region in Kenya, but for some logistical reasons they couldn't, and Djibouti as well. But maybe I could also fill the gap about what's happening in Somalia. Like in Somaliland, I think the next region in Puntland is seeing some sort of a response where community-led large-scale reforestation activities are happening. Debate about aligning the development agenda with the climate change is also happening in some way. But elsewhere in the south of Somalia, the policies and strategies are in place by the new Ministry of Environment in Mogadishu, but implementation is a little bit weak for obvious reasons of the security situation in the country. But what's happening in the Somali region in Kenya and maybe in Djibouti, and to some extent it also links to what the minister said about the general diplomatic engagement, is while there are strategies and policies and plans in Kenya and in Ethiopia I think it does not reflect the realities and priorities of the Somali region within Ethiopia and Kenya in the national strategy. It doesn't feature as a priority. That's why I think, like the minister said, in general, while Somalia goes through the challenges and the difficulties it's going through, while other regions within other polities are not being seen as a priority within their own country, a different voice of the Somali region on the climate change needs to be voiced somewhere. And I think specifically the importance of having this kind of gathering in partnership with University College London is in somehow trying to readdress that kind of a gap. So basically, in conclusion, I mean, we must always see the climate impact in the Somali Horn as a region, as an interconnected ecological zone. We must always see that while it is complex, simplification of policies is very dangerous. And in the end, I think we must adopt policies that reflect the realities of the communities we are trying to solve. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nuruddin, and again, very insightful. And thanks for casting that regional lens for us. And I think I did learn a lot. I think the phrase people-centered approach is often used a lot. And I think that's one of the things you're advocating for, that even when the policies are in place, they need to reflect the priorities of people, and therefore the voices of people need to also come through quite strongly. And policy implementation gaps are a big issue, not just in climate change, but across Africa. You realize that sometimes policies remain on paper and they are not really implemented on the ground. So how do we go beyond policies being on paper to implementation, even when they exist? And how do we raise the voice, particularly of people that are at risk, affected, marginalized, are impacted, so that we can bring the change that we want? The people-centered approach is a very important reminder, and so thank you very much for that. So we've had three very general but very interconnected reflections from a national perspective, a more community but research / projectized perspective, and then a more regional perspective. And now I'd like to open up the floor and at this point for both questions but also for contributions. And if you would like to speak, let's do the traditional raise of hands. I'll identify a few for the first round, and then can I just say, based on experience, that it starts off a little bit slow, and then in 20 minutes time, there'll be a sea of hands. So get in first. That's how climate change works. So anybody would like to speak? Let me see a show of hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 5. We got the first 5. I'll come around with the mic.
I'm particularly talking about, for instance, if I take an example, which is not different from many other places, example of Somaliland climate change IDBs, the minister has mentioned 500,000 people. And Somaliland, we talk about 6 million or 5.5 million or something like that. 500,000 is what percent? It's already a good chunk of the population. And they are from the most productive sectors of the society. Somaliland is dependent on, the Somalis dependent on livestock. And these people, 95% of them come from livestock population. And the people I'm talking about was from 2015, 2016, 2017, droughts, and they are still in camps. And of course, it's the responsibility first and foremost of the national governments to drive and to work and to talk hard about their fate of these people. They are lost for the national economy. They are lost for their own 500,000 people who are sitting in camps and who are dependent. So my point is, we need 2 things. One, to focus on what the product of climate change, the result, the impact. These people that climate change is going to produce, which are who lost their livestock or agricultural land or have moved to other places. What that we are not we can't change maybe what God is producing, but we can change also. We talk about adaptation, but adaptation is already some people who can adapt, but those people who are in camps are there, and mostly it becomes the international community's problem. National governments leave it to the international community, but the international community cannot continue forever. So my point is, we need to focus on what to do with those people who are already there, and with those who are people who are going to be displaced by climate change. And this is some of the research that are going on. I want to tire you with what we are coming up, but these are the issues that are going to we have to focus on the victims. Thank you.
The minister you were mentioning this kind of focus on counterterrorism and security and so on. When we look at the Horn, I also remember last year, this event, there was a similar event a year ago, where a bit of the pitch was also about how the politics and this kind of immediate security issues and so on take the focus, and how climate change kind of get pushed to the background in a way also because of that, both in the politics of the Horn, but also when you look at reactions from donors and so on, who are often not very risk willing when they come in, it often becomes this kind of short-term reactive responses to immediate security situations, also when we look at Somalia, right? So I was just curious to hear your perspectives on the interactions between climate change, peace and security. There is a lot on how climate change is fueling conflicts, right? But I also think we need to have some attention on how addressing climate change, addressing natural resource management and so on, how climate finance, how those aspects are super important contributions to peace and security as well. So I would just like to hear your perspectives on that. Thank you.
It's a question, a related question for Hannah and for Galjire, about data, and knowledge, the topic here. I'm wondering, Hannah, firstly, if you can say a little bit about what information you're using in the forecasting models and how the third generation forecasting compares to the first and the second generation forecasting. I think you briefly mentioned might be meteorologists involved. Are you relying on local understandings of weather forecasting, and how does this compare to kind of what exists already? And for the minister, you said one problem is lack of knowledge. I'm wondering what type of knowledge, what type of data would be useful, and how, if you have an idea of how that might be rectified. So, thanks.
So we can allow the panel to reflect on this round, and then we can take another round. There are some specific questions to Hannah and to the minister, and then the rest are a bit more open. So maybe we can start with the end, and then probably come back to the beginning. So Hannah, question on the data and the knowledge systems, and then Honorable Minister, again, also the kind of knowledge, and then this nexus between climate change, peace, and security, and how can we address that? And then maybe we can take the general ones.
That's a very good question, actually. So we've done on-the-ground research. So Somalis are very educated. They have lived in the pastoralist lifestyle for a very long time. So they were telling us a lot about the past. And sometimes looking at past predictions can also let us know a little bit what might happen in the future. Now with climate change, they've all told us that the droughts are lasting much longer than they used to. The oldest also told us about the floods are becoming heavier. So hence why a lot of people are ending up in IDP camps. And on that, we are working with meteorologists, and there's new science out there that can probably, without even going on the ground, let us know about through satellite images the soil moisture, so 2 meters of the soil moisture of the places we might need. We are at the beginning still, I would say, with the Climate Hazard Institute in California and also some guys here in the UK. And yeah, together with James Firebrace, we're trying to get the 2 to 3 months predictions on a sub-regional level for the people. And also to add on that, I thought it was also very important what you mentioned, Dr. Fadel, about people already in IDP camps. So we've spoken to people already in IDP camps and possible what could happen to their future and how they could possibly get back into pastoralist lifestyles. So they told us that they would need about 30 herds, livestock, to get back into pastoralism at a minimum. So maybe we can also look at planning that for them. I think with more research and with more data that we have, we can also, in the COP29, as a collective, Somalis in the Horn who are all facing the same issues, probably demand or request a little bit of more funding in all of those Somali regions to have better underground planning as well and to invest in that.
Thank you. Thank you. Over to you, Minister.
Where's the other thing? Thank you. I think I will take. I will also answer the question of security and how it affects. But let me first talk about the data and the knowledge that's needed. Dhalinyarada Soomaalida waxaan u sheegayaa mahmaha baa jirta la yidhaha marka war la helo ayaa tala la hela, which means in English, loosely translated, that when you get information, then you can make the right decision. The impact of the climate change needs, as we mentioned before, that we have to have real fact-based data to what happened before, what we had before, what happened to it, and what you have remaining now. How did it happen? What caused it? And all that kind of relevant questions to be answered. And that has to be kept in somewhere and presented to anyone who who is interested to either helping us or for our own good to take it the cue from it. At the moment, the kind of data we have is scattered among different institutions or ministries or government entities of different kinds. And it's not collected in a manner that becomes useful when we need it. And most of the times we don't even know if it exists at all. We also don't have the data of, for example, the meteorological data of what happened, how much rain we used to have, how much rain we are getting now, when are we getting. It's the same thing, basically. All kinds of information we need is not there at all. And if it's there, as I said, probably it is, concealed somewhere and kept by other people. And we have also, in our governmental system, since we are comparatively a young government, which democratically changed so often, with new leaders who come up with their own ideas of how it's been structured. Sometimes we change ministries' mandate from one place to another, and we divide sometimes a certain ministry into multiple entities, and that creates the mandate to be scattered as well, and after that creates a conflict of who is doing what. So all these things need, data collection to be used. Same thing happens to our laws and rules, because we have at the moment where our constitution allows that we use different laws, the one from when we were part of Somalia, the one before that, when the colonial, British colonial, and the one we create ourselves now for the last 84 years. So that also needs, although we have a commission for that to you know, regulate, that also creates legal issues at times. So all in all, I think we all understand how useful and what data is and how useful it is. And for us to, you know, create an institution that's dedicated to keep the information and the data that's funded by the government, it's difficult because the budgetary constraints at the moment. There's what I can call, a small amount of information collected by FAO, United Nations, and they are trying to create, they're trying to leave that to us, but they are not helping to fund it. So that's how we need it, and that's you know, what do we mean by we don't have credible data to manage the impact and the climate change, and in many other aspects of our governing system. Knowledge, which comes to the same place, is, for example, I'll give you a good example of my ministry. It's mandated to approve and check all environmental, to check all development programs or projects or industry, to approve their, you know, how environmentally correct they are doing their business. But we don't have the right inspectors or the right people or the right equipment to check with. For example, if we have to go into a mining company and they're using cyanide and mercury to get some gold out of the sand, what can my ministry do? Or they just go there and they don't have the right equipment to check what's being used in that sand, and the right people who know, who have that knowledge, chemists or whatever you call them, or the necessary you know, people to handle that kind of business. Even the protection part of it, that you have to protect yourself, and the people who are working with it, they're working with their bare hands and handling mercury. And they're leaving it with the sand, which I heard it will be there 50 years, and whenever rain comes, it will run off to the water system and the underground water. So we need people to be trained in institutions like this, so they can better handle their job, and they can have a sustainable, you know, knowledge to mitigate the problems that the climate change and the environment degradation that will result from that. So that's what we mean by the knowledge we need. We need knowledge.
Thank you.
At the moment, the World Bank is helping us to train through some programs a small number of people, but that's far cry from what we need. The security issue the professor mentioned, I think without security, there will be nothing done. That we, you know, it's difficult to do anything. And when such IDBs and these people displaced, and those who lost their livelihoods completely, and that magnitude number, that great number, they will come to the cities, which is already suffering from unemployment of 70%. and there are not much. There's nothing even to steal at that moment, certain times. So what would they do? We don't have welfare system. We don't have. We only rely on family, linkage and helping each other. But when that kind of thing happens, there's nothing we can do about it. So that certainly will create a security problem. And the least, that will cost the government to enforce the peace and security and to direct or redirect or transfer the resources to the police and other institutions directing the peace, instead of helping the people and doing deployment programs. So that's the least it will cost, the diversion of resources from social, assistance or social deployment to police or other forces that can deal with that kind of situation. So then that will cost. It comes from the impact of the climate change, where people in Somaliland, 70% are dependent on livestock or agriculture, and that's how it affects the situation. I think that's enough.
Thank you very much. I think you've given us a very comprehensive response. And maybe before we go for the next round, Nuruddin, the other outstanding question was, we need to, what Ali was saying, that we need to demand actions and also more finance. So just any quick reflection, how can we demand action and how do we go about this big beast of more money and financing? Maybe just any quick reflections and then we'll come back to the floor.
Okay, thank you. I agree that we need to... Sorry? Sorry? No, I agree that we need to demand action, but demand from who? No, we need to demand action from ourselves first, not externally. There is a lot that our governments and governances can do to prioritize climate change, whether it's in Somaliland, whether it's in Somalia, whether it's in Somali region, both in Ethiopia and Kenya, to put the climate change at the front and center. With even the limited resources they have, they could do better. But also from the society as well, that educating ourselves, whatever action that the people can do in terms of responding to the climate change, I think it is an area that we need to demand action and accountability from the society at large. But also, in terms of climate financing, everything depends on the capacity of governances that we have. I mean, climate finance is there globally, whether it's limited or not, it's there. But in order to access it, it is a function of how developed your governance is, but also how transparent your institutions are, and how the capacity of absorbing those finances are. I think in Somalia, I have been a witness to the lack of capacity of being able to access those kind of resources, even though if it is available. So still, I think we need to direct the fingers up to ourselves and demand action from ourselves. And quickly, if I can reflect also on the nexus between climate and conflict, they do impact each other both ways, where the climate change impact is and exacerbates the security situation, and the security situation also exacerbates climate change. In effect, I think, in a sense, Somalia, in the Somali region of the Horn, which is mostly arid and dry, climate change in the view of lack of water and lack of agricultural cover Somalia has for over generations been dealing with climate change and then has been dealing with conflict as well, because there have been intercommunal conflict over the Somali region for a very, very long time. But what the people knew in order to cope with that level of climate change and that level of conflict has now been mechanized into a bigger scale, whether the climate change is much bigger impact and where the conflict is mechanized, whether internationalized and terrorized and all the rest of. So the capacity for the local knowledges and the local coping mechanisms to cope with it's not there anymore. So that's a particular area where I think it's a whole new thrust in Africa about climate change and peace and security, which is a big thing.
Thank you. Great. I'm going to come back to everybody, and now
It's increasing.
the hands are increasing. So the time will reduce. You have less than 2 minutes per contribution. So where's the other microphone that was going around? Okay, so Michael, we'll start with over the Uber. So 3 in a row behind her, and then a 4th one on this side. Please let's make the question or contribution very succinct and brief.
Well, and I just have a question for all 3 of you. Thanks for all your contributions. They were amazing. I just want to know the possibility of creating a shared research center for the Somali Horn, where knowledge, data, and basically everything could be shared, instead of always relying on the UN or some other actors to share those information with the countries in the Somali Horn. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Right behind you.
My question is around, we know that in the Somali Horn, young people represent the majority of the population. And I know Ali mentioned at the beginning, kind of like us young people in this room here, kind of focusing on those in the region. My question is to the Minister, but also to Nuruddin as well, like what initiatives have you seen that kind of governments or from a local level have been implemented that young people get involved in, be it kind of skills, education at universities or schools, and kind of how do we get young people involved in this kind of issue?
Just behind you as well.
This is easy. I just wanted to know, to what extent can we continue to sidestep over the broader question of the political economy within the region, which, if we look at process of capital accumulation, which has made the average pastoralist far more susceptible to problems pertaining to climate change, how much can we just ignore that question, which livestock keeps getting exported to the detriment of the land, practices of overgrazing, etc. This is a serious sort of bigger picture that we can't just continue to sidestep over, more or less, the macro reality. That's pretty much my question.
That's great, thank you. The last one will be on this side. In glasses, so Michael, now you have to go around.
I've currently been doing a project on climate change as a threat multiplier, specifically looking at the Horn of Africa and looking at the Sahel. And the question I had's kind of already been asked, but I was going to go more down the route of, as diaspora, what can we do other than just demanding change? How can we utilize our educations and the opportunities that we've been given to help back home, especially when we don't want to step on the toes of the people who are maybe in the country studying themselves, by utilizing our Western educations to take opportunities from them, but supporting them and actually making a change so we can stop the the nexus of climate change threats, as like violent extremism, insecurity, threats against women. How can we help as diaspora without just demanding other people to help us?
Sorry, this isn't a question, more of a contribution. My name is Adiyad Liban. I'm a student here at University College London. I'm working with the DP right now. I'm doing urban economic development. More of a contribution. I don't believe there's a willingness, a political will in Somaliland. I want to sort of draw upon Nuruddin's comments about looking within, because Ali said something about, greedy capitalists. Let's look at the capitalists within Somaliland. For example, we mentioned mining, all these chemicals that are going into waterways in places like Senag. Even within Salahli, for example, this is not too far from Hargeisa, they're cutting down trees. This is, how close to the capital. There's no regulation, in my opinion. The fact that as well, all the ministries are in Hargeisa. There's no ministries in Senag, no ministries in Bur'a, and these are the areas that are contributing the most in terms of livestock. But yeah, I just don't think there's a will personally.
Very good. A lot of great questions. Time is running, so I would exercise my discretion as the moderator and share the questions so you don't have to answer all of them each. So what I would say is that maybe, Nuruddin, can there be a shared research center for the Somali Horn? And then whilst you think about that, also think about the question on the political economy and capital accumulation. And as a driver, the pastoralist lifestyle itself is driving, a lot of exploitation, and capitalism is driving it. It's not just about climate change and, limited pasture, but actually there's a lot of exports. There's a lot of capitalist interest that is also decimating the pastoralist lifestyle, as it were. How can we reflect on the broader picture and the broader challenge? So the broader challenge, like you also mentioned, is not oversimplification, and then the research center. And then, Honorable Minister, if you can reflect on initiatives for young people, what are the opportunities for young people to participate in this? And then also on the political will question. And then, Hannah, if you can talk about what can the diaspora do, and also say something about the shared research center. What do you think about a shared research center for the Somali Horn? Right, so back to my panel. You all have two reflections.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, can there be a shared center? I think there can, and I think there ought to be that kind of a shared center. And I think it's places like Somaliland that can take the initiative. I mean, it's much more stable in the region, and get the confidence to say that we want the shared sort of a research center that will be doing research all across Somali region, including Somalia. And I think that will not impact your recognition pathway, but that will be where I think Somaliland can take the initiative. In terms of the bigger picture of the political economy and how livestock itself is contributing to maybe eradicating, not only, I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. And I said earlier, pastoralism is evolving. It's not static. It's evolving. It's adapting with different marketplaces, not only in Somalia, but also across the region, but also further afield to the Gulf countries, and even much wider nowadays. Even there are links to Turkey, where the livestock sort of a business is going all the way. So not only the policies, but also the business practices need to adapt to that kind of reality. So it's complex, but I think initiatives need to reflect those kind of an evolving reality.
Thank you. Yeah. So, Honourable Minister, on the political will and then initiatives for young people.
That's a difficult question. I think Nuruddin was supposed to answer that.
We can come back with this stuff.
Really, before the social media, we had elders and we had young people who listen to each other. But at the moment, it seems that each group is dealing with themselves, with insults and tribalism and some other issues that the older people cannot interfere because they have no access to the to that kind of media. But really, I would advise the young people of Somalia, Somaliland, the whole, everywhere where they live, the Somalis, to sit back and get out of that kind of politics that that's led by few people on the social media, and that affects them negatively. But come back to their roots and demand from the governments they live under or they represent when they are out of the country to come up with programs that they can help through their countries. One main thing we can suggest is that they create voluntary groups that can work, and they can do it when they are together. Doesn't matter where they come from. Somalis are Somalis.
Yes.
But the governments they lead are different. But nobody in his correct mind will refuse a group of Somalis who come to one of the places where different governments are with the initiative of helping the communities who are suffering or live in there. So if they work together, at the moment it doesn't exist, but if, and I will definitely take that to my government to come up with useful initiatives that all young people can help, come together and help. I think it will be it'll be beneficial to all. At the moment, there's no particular thing that I have in mind. Other than that, you know, we in Somaliland we try to divert their attention from this tribalism and these you know problems. We also added trying to create that different groups of youth who are now separated by politics come together, discuss their problems together, and unite. Personally, I took part in those many times, where it doesn't satisfy anyone. You know, when all groups will come against that, because certain politicians and certain people like to keep the people apart, so they can rule them, so they can put their ideas into them. So I think if we have to agree upon a noble issue that's beneficial to communities we either we govern or live in, and the young people who are the majority. In Somaliland, we say they are about 70% under 35 years old. Probably 60 now, that was about a few years back. Even though we don't have good data we use, but that's what they assume. So I think we have to take that into account and create new initiatives to come up with. But certainly there are no in place at the moment. I must admit that. Regarding the contribution made by that there are no ministries in different places, different cities in the country. Actually, the system of government we have is like many African countries. The capital, due to many reasons, contains the headquarters of the government offices. But there is an office or a branch, regional branch and district branches of government of every department in every region. So it's a matter of what's being done with that and how it's done, but the representation is there, and the system of government is there too. So that idea actually is maybe it's kind of not the right information. Yeah, but we have to always admit that we have a long way to go when it's coming to governing, because of many issues that curtail or holds us back from doing many things. The biggest one is always the conflict in politics. It's the main one. But we shall overcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can give maybe an example of what the diaspora can do. Of a group I met in Baidawa in Somalia. There was a group of diaspora, mainly from UK, I think, or from Europe, that I met in Baidawa, and they were doing something very interesting. They were linking culture and nature. So they have a yearly thing where they go do some environmental, land ecological fixes and tree planting and all that, but they were linking that with Somali poetry. Because Somalia is the land of poetry. There's very orally literate, so we're doing a lot of events about poetry of the specific species that they were replanting. They're creating huge amount of excitement and awareness, and I think that has increased the ecological restoration of that particular area that they were volunteering for. There are a lot of exciting things that the diaspora can do. The trick is having that kind of a link, and as the minister said, a voluntary sort of organizations and teams that can go and specifically pick on one thing, whether it's tree planting, whether it's educating children, whether it's restoration at school levels. The possibilities are endless.
Okay, over to Hannah for quick reflections before we close.
There we go.
I think the Shared Resource Center is actually a fantastic idea, because in the 2015 drought to 2017, like Dr. Fadl mentioned, and also the ministry, the Somali region had the same exact drought. Somalia had the same drought. A lot of people that, due to that drought, lost their livestock, ended up in IDP camps since 2015 to 2017. And we have met them in 2023, and there was still a lot of people still there. And I think they called the drought Afgudye, correct me if I'm mistaken. So it means nothing to put in your mouth. And they tried to go from, from Somaliland, all the way down to the Somali region and were there was drought as well. And then they went all the way for those that had the strength and the money to Shabelle River. But a lot of people didn't make it there with their livestock. So it's very important to have this shared resource center, just because, like the ministry also said, we all face the same type of issues. We're all interconnected. There's no real borders. If you look at the pastoralists, they do travel across every region to, for example, to El Bulala. If you ever visit there, you'll meet Somalis from every city, every town. So, and I think that's the beauty of the Somali pastoralists. Just one short thing about the diaspora. I think it's amazing for diaspora wanting to get involved and help people back home. And like Nuruddin also gave the example of the diaspora coming together, planting. I mean, we can become agriculturalists as well and also learn something. I mean, planting something is not something you learn in school. Help the communities out. Maybe we can work out something with the governments to plant trees, with climate predictions as well, to know exactly when to plant trees, and also learn a lot from the people on the ground. Now, they have been planting and doing these things for a very long time. Just some of the elders can kind of predict if there's going to be heavy droughts by the moisture and the direction of the winds, which is very impressive. So I think we can learn a lot from them, and they can also probably learn from us as well. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. I'm very cognizant that time is far spent, and it's been a very interesting evening of varied reflections that really have reinforced the message that this is an important and urgent issue that needs a response from different quarters, different levels of engagement, from regional to national to subnational, the involvement of different actors, from government to private sector to researchers, academia. As a university, we will commit to convening the space of the dialogue, but we'll also take a step further and hopefully develop more projects that have more actionable outcomes. The knowledge must be usable, but it must also be used. And we're hoping to bridge these gaps and have different multi-stakeholder projects that we are going to develop. So thank you very much. A lot has been said on many topics I cannot summarize in one paragraph, but I think that we will be continuing these conversations, and this will not be the end of the dialogue on climate change in the Somali Horn, but rather the beginning. And hopefully we would, through the same mailing list and through the same fora you found out, you'll be kept informed and kept updated, and would probably use it to also update you on how far we're going in terms of advocacy, in terms of knowledge, in terms of data research and action. I love what the minister said. One of the things he said was that I'll take it back to my government. So over to you. Take this back to wherever you've come from. Take this back to wherever your organization is. Take this back to wherever you sit. Thank you all for making the time in an evening like this.